This is Mitchell Wilson. Look at him. Beautiful kid. 11 years old. He spent years battling muscular dystrophy, which made him a target for bullies. They were so relentless, and Mitchell felt so unsafe that he found his own solution. He tied a plastic bag around his head, ending his life and finally ending his torment. Tonight, Mitchell's father is speaking out, hoping it will make things better for other bullied kids, but fearing down deep that his son's death won't change a damn thing. I'm Mark Kelly, and here's what we want to connect. A heartbreaking new low in the story of childhood bullying. Tonight, a father's grief and why he says justice for his son won't be done. From rhetoric in New York,
we extend our hands to the Israeli government.
Israel wants peace with the Palestinian state.
To reality in Ramallah. Is it a step forward or a step back? We'll get the view from the United Nations and the West Bank. Putting eyewitnesses under the microscope.
Mr. Hunt, did you have anything to do with the rape or murder of Deborah Sykes?
I have.
Two cases raise suspicions about supposedly solid testimony. And in the disconnect, why this man ate the last meal in Texas. Welcome to the show. Well, the alarm bells have been ringing about a problem for so long now, and yet it seems no one knows how to solve it. I'm talking about bullying. Bullying so extreme that children, young children, are killing themselves. You've heard the stories, you've heard the warnings, but the full impact of this problem only hits home when we put a face on it. And tonight, that face is of an 11-year-old Ontario boy who just couldn't take it anymore. Mitchell Wilson was a kid with determination, and he needed it. He suffered from muscular dystrophy, a disease that slowly weakens the muscles. But he wasn't about to let that hold him back. Every day he walked around his neighborhood relentlessly to keep his strength. But it's on one of those days that his world changed. A bully mugged him for an iPhone he was carrying, jumping him, his face pounded into the ground. The other kid was arrested, but the prospect of having to face his bully in court later this month was just too much for Mitchell. The day before he was supposed to start school this year, he took his own life. He was just 11 years old. Mitchell father's Craig joins me now from Pickering, Ontario. Craig, I'm a dad of 4 young boys myself, and my heart goes out to you. I'm very, very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Now, tell me about Mitchell. Tell me about the boy you loved. Tell me about the kind of kid that Mitchell was.
He was a great kid. It was a pleasure being his dad for the time I got to know him. He loved to go racing, go-kart racing. He loved riding his bike, anything to do with wheels and a motor. He liked riding in, no matter how cheesy it was or someone's piece of crap. He had something to say about it. He loved swimming, like going to the cottage. He loved his RC cars because it didn't require anything physical, so he could be just as fast as somebody in a go-kart because he had a heavy right foot, because he was never able to run or jump like other kids. So the great equalizer was the gas pedal. So his one love in life was to get in a fast car and go fast. So that's what he loved to do. Sort of a chip off the old block, I guess.
I guess though, when he was out of the car, out of the vehicle, though, he was vulnerable because of the disease that he was battling. So did he feel vulnerable, a vulnerable kid when he was outside in the world?
He did, because he could be knocked over, blown over at any moment's notice because of his lack of muscle tone and control. So because he had to walk with his shoulders back and his sense of balance was off, a slight nudge, even by somebody in the crowd, like Canada's Wonderland, would knock him to the ground. So there was always that anxiety, even walking around in a mall or in a group of kids on a school trip, that he could get knocked down anytime.
But Craig, I imagine as his dad, you'd want to be so protective of your son, especially in that situation. And I know he was bullied at school and you were dealing with that, but tell me about the day when you had heard that he had gone out for his walk and he'd been mugged. How did you feel about that?
Well, I wanted to kill. The urge to kill was unbelievable. I wanted to beat the police to the scene in case they were still around. A lot of anger, a lot of mean thoughts that just run through your head that just you wouldn't think of. And not normally would I think of like beating I wouldn't think of beating a child. But, you know, when you prey on a disabled child, especially when the child was going to school with him and knew that he walked with a walker at school, knew that he was easy prey.
Craig, I mean, clearly you couldn't have foreseen what was going to happen in this situation. But did you have any inclination just how hard Mitchell was hit by this? How scared he was about this entire event, what had happened to him?
It showed up in the weeks subsequent to the attack when Mitchell would have fits about going on his walks, or his behavior changed, and he would give up more of a fight than normal about going on one of his walks. Threats of killing himself. We put him into therapy at the Schoenecker Clinic to try and curb some of his anxiety and to talk about it with professionals, and to no avail, unfortunately.
He's an 11-year-old kid, and obviously he's looking for some sort of solution, and he came up with a solution that he thought was right, that would end his torment.
No.
But you've lost your son.
Yes.
He's lost his life, and out there is the bully. Where is the justice for the bully?
Well, I'm told it's the bully's first-time offense, and that the harshest penalty he would ever receive would be probation. And that with that, he already violated the protective order after the arrest. So how is that a consequence? If all of the young offender is going to get his probation after taking this kid's youth away, like his innocence, his all sense of being safe in his own neighborhood, where his friends play, where he walks, where he lives.
So what do you want to see done here, Craig?
I think we need to see changes to the Young Offenders Act, or scrap it altogether. I think if you're old enough to do the crime, why shouldn't you do the time? Why shouldn't there be stiff consequences? The whole purpose of law is to create fear in the people that think bad thoughts so that they don't do them. If you don't fear the law, then how are you going to hold the law? How is there any fear? The whole purpose of law is to create fear in man in order for them not to do those things, and to teach the people that it's wrong. And if you're going to do it, you're going to do those stuff. You're going to get the penalty for that.
Craig, I know you wanted the opportunity to read a victim impact statement there, then a trial that may not happen now because of your son's death. But do you hope that you want to make this bully think and at least try to scare him straight?
I'd love to think that. I don't think it's going to.
Why not?
Because he comes from a family that his older brother is incarcerated for shooting a police officer in York Region. His father was murdered. So what is this family living with now? What kind of standard do they hold themselves to?
Craig, I hope your message is heard out there, and I hope your son hasn't died in vain. Again, our condolences, and thank you so much for talking to us tonight.
Thank you.
You know, Mitchell's death comes just days after a 14-year-old Buffalo boy killed himself after he too was bullied. James Rodemeyer was tormented at school because he was gay, but his death came as a surprise to many because just a few months ago, Jamie made a video for the online anti-bullying campaign called It Gets Better.
Hi, this is Jamie from Buffalo, New York, and I'm just here to tell you that it does get better. Hold your head up and you'll go far, because that's all you have to do. Just love yourself and you're set.
Jamie Rodemeyer had been bullied since 5th grade, almost always because of his sexuality. Police are now investigating whether criminal charges can be laid against his bullies. And online, kids his age are rallying, dedicating an anti-bullying and anti-suicide project to him. And you know what's heartbreaking is that these are just two stories where kids have gone to desperate lengths to stop the suffering. So What's it going to take to finally put an end to this kind of torment? Well, Rob Frenette's been an anti-bullying advocate for years, Executive Director of Bullying Canada. Rob joins us now from Fredericton. Rob, thanks for talking to us tonight. And, you know, it's these stories we hear in the media that pop up every once in a while that certainly break my heart as a dad. But you hear about these all the time. Tell me, are you hearing more of these stories? Give us a sense of perspective on the size and scope of this problem.
Mark, this is a huge problem, and myself and the other executive director, Katie, who's based out of Ontario, get these calls daily. For instance, I got a call last week from a parent who lost their son from bullycide, or what's known as a suicide related to bullying in Hamilton. You know, we get these calls regularly, and as a matter of fact, these stats for pertaining to who visits our website and who calls our support line are actually tripling for the month of September. And you know, my heart goes out to this family who, again, has lost another child related to a bullying incident, and you know, it needs to be addressed. It's something that is a national problem, and we're doing our best to do so, and we're doing our best to make sure that the problem is looked after and taken care of. But really, you know, one suicide is definitely one too many.
Yeah, well, Rob, I mean, I know groups like yours are doing your best. I commend you for everything you do, and I certainly don't say you haven't done enough. But what I do say is we're not doing enough. And I think at a certain point, you know, we have the public awareness campaigns. We talk to the schools. We do everything we can, and the problem persists. Is there a new approach? Do we have to go somewhere much deeper and much harder to be able to deal with this? Our last guest says, look, scrap the Young Offenders Act. Let's go that far. What do you think? I mean, you've tried your best, but clearly something more has to be done.
Definitely something more has to be done, and yes, we've got the public campaigns out there, and yes, we've got the public service announcements running, and yes, schools have our material. But it also relates back to, well, how educated is the teacher on how to deal with bullying? Do they know how to address the situation? How familiar are students with codes of conduct and anti-bullying measures in their school?
But Rob, come on, they've got to know. Kids know what is right and what is wrong fundamentally when it comes to bullying. They get it. They know when bullies are crossing the line, they know full well what they're doing. And yes, the teachers, I agree, have to do more. What about the parents, though? I mean, where are the parents? In this case, it sounds like, you know, there's a single mom. I don't know what she's dealing with. But so often we're saying, how come the schools aren't doing more? I say, what about the bullies, the parents of the bullies?
Oh, definitely. We get calls from parents of their child being bullies all the time, and their first reaction is, well, it's not my son or daughter. They didn't do anything. Definitely, they play a very important role because they need to address the situation. That's the only way their son or daughter is going to be able to change from bullying people to getting the support and resources they need. And yes, Mark, you're totally right in saying that they need the information, they need support. But the biggest thing is, how can we go about getting that information to them? And they tend to put up a barrier of, well, it's not my son or daughter. That barrier needs to come down, and they need to have the situation addressed.
Well, as we have in this case, they said, you know, even if it had gone to court, that the worst would have happened is the kid would have been put on probation. I don't know if that's, you know, is the proper punishment in a situation like this. I just don't know where the consequences are, because it seems like the kids who are being bullied are the ones suffering the consequences as opposed to the bullies themselves.
I do have to agree with that. With the amount of red tape that's currently in place for youth who are being bullied, usually they tend to have more consequences or more suffering than the actual bullies do, and there's usually not enough of a penalty for the bully to have to adhere to. And I think it's important to understand that, yes, not every bullying situation should be criminally charged, depending on the situation. I mean, sure. With this latest case, definitely there should be criminal charges, and they definitely should investigate the matter as to, well, is there anything that can be done now that this young child has taken his own life because of what's happening, what's going to happen to this bully. You know, the father is saying that probation is the only option. Definitely that shouldn't be the case. There should not be probation for you essentially causing somebody to take their own life related to bullying. There does need to be some definite action on that part, and bullying technically is criminal harassment under the criminal code, but is it usually act under that section? You have to be, of course, 12 to be charged under the criminal code. There isn't enough support in that, and for some reason the bullies have found loopholes in order to be able to get away with this situation, and that's the thing that needs to be addressed.
Well, listen, Rob, you keep up the fight. It's a good fight, and I know you're doing your best out there. Thanks for talking to us tonight.
Thanks, Mark.
You know, one of the most influential people in the world, at least when it comes to reaching kids today, is determined to stop bullying in its tracks once and for all. I'm talking about Lady Gaga. In fact, in the video Jamie Rodemeyer's made a few months ago before his suicide, he thanked Gaga for all she's done.
I look up to one of the most supporting people of the gay community that I think of, that I know. Lady Gaga. She makes me so happy, and she lets me know that I was born this way.
Well, Gaga was so moved by Rodemeyer's story that she tweeted this to more than 13 million of her followers. "I am meeting with our president. I will not stop fighting. This must end." Gaga wants to see legislation making bullying illegal and plans to meet with Barack Obama at a Democratic fundraiser next week. The White House, however, has yet to confirm this meeting.